Just wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to see so many younger faces in the audience this evening. I am Stephanie Spizzato. I'm the Vice Chair of the Hollis Democrats, and I will be your moderator this evening. Again, I wanted to thank you all for coming out to our Young Voices, Powerful Choices event this evening. So first, I'd like to set the stage and underscore why we're here tonight by sharing some statistics. So young people aged 18 to 29 consistently have the lowest voter turnout of any age group. In the 2022 midterm election, only 23% of registered voters in this age group cast their ballots, 23%. Turnout among the youngest voters, those 18 and 19, is even lower. Here in New Hampshire during the 2022 midterm election, 75% of 18-year-olds did not vote, 75%. So we've gathered tonight to better understand some of their perspectives of the young voters, to explore how we can more effectively engage them in the work that we're doing, get them interested in the midterm election, especially this critical election. This work has never been more important, especially given our current climate of heightened political tension. So we have an outstanding program prepared for you this evening. First, we'll hear from our special guest, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander. Then we'll move to our panel speakers. We have Maddie McCluskey from the New Hampshire Young Democrats, Randall Nielsen from Career Elective, and State Senate candidate Carol Roy. And then following their remarks, we'll open it up to a panel question and answer session. And then we'll conclude with a few other words from candidate Roy. So we really want this event to be interactive. We really want to hear from you all. And there's two ways you can get involved. You can either stand up and raise your hand and someone will bring a microphone to you, or you can write your questions on the cards and with the pens given to you, and someone will pick those up and bring them up. So two ways, please share your questions. So now I'd like to introduce Congresswoman Goodlander. Maggie has built a career dedicated to public service, serving in the U.S. Navy, as well as national security and policy roles, working on issues affecting families and communities, both in New Hampshire and across the country. She brings that experience to Congress, where she is focused on strengthening opportunity, protecting fundamental rights, and delivering results for the people of New Hampshire. So please welcome Congresswoman.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. How we doing, Hollis? Every time I'm in the Lawrence barn, I'm reminded that Hollis is a genuine center of excellence. This is where I used to get my clock cleaned on the playing fields growing up. And every time I'm back here, my blood pressure goes down significantly, because especially in this room full of old friends and new friends, and I'm just grateful to you all for coming out on a really beautiful night for this important conversation. We're going to send Carol Roy to the New Hampshire Senate, aren't we? Everybody who's putting their name on the ballot September 8th and November 3rd, will you please stand up? I see Melanie Levate. Everyone who's running. The Senate and the Executive Council. So we've got to get this done. I want to just say a few words about where we are and where I think we got to be going together. Here we are. We're a little more than 100 days before the September 8th primary, and is everyone clocking the big deadline next week, June 2nd, 1 week from today? A very important deadline that I hope you'll all be mindful of and spread the word about. It's the deadline to change your party registration. So for this upcoming election, we need every eligible voter to be in a position to help us take back our democracy at every level. And that starts June 2nd. So please block that deadline. It's a really important one. For what I think is the first important piece of business, which is we've got to take care of business and make sure that everybody is registered, every eligible voter is registered, and that we're prepared for what lies ahead. Because when I was last in this great Lawrence Barn, it was on town meeting day here in Hollis, and talking to this is genuinely a center of excellence. Well, can I just ask anyone who's going to be working the elections this fall, can you stand up? You're volunteering, you're going to be working in a polling place. Can we give it up for? You are all an inspiration, because what taking care of business this fall means, we've had the luxury of sending election observers to elections for my entire lifetime. Those are important roles, but now more than ever before, we need people of good faith in the polling places working our elections on election day. So we're gonna have to build up a field army of patriotic public servants who are going to be prepared on election day, on game day. It's just so mission critical right now. I think it's one of the most important things we can do. And this really, to me, comes from conversations I've had with election officials who have just said, it's never been a harder time because the threats to people in public positions of public trust have never been more acute than they are right now. But this is the time to really lean in and to be a part of it in any way you possibly can. And if you can volunteer and be in there in the polling place on election day, please do it, because we desperately need you. Between now and then, we've got to build a field army that can work together and organize like we've never organized before. Because what I can tell you, sitting on the Armed Services Committee, the things that keep me up at night are the ways in which our military is being used in ways that we've never seen before. We have a Secretary of Defense at the helm who has no business serving as Secretary of Defense, who has been given carte blanche to think about ways to weaponize our military against our people. Just think back to about a year ago when the experimentation with the domestic uses of our military began. This has just become even more present, I think, but normalized in a way that we can never allow it to happen. Having a standing army of trained National Guardsmen, 23,000 strong, a domestic disturbance task force, they're calling it, is not something that we need right now in this country, and it's going to take patriots, and that's what you all are, of good faith, who are prepared to stand up, to be working our polls, to be keeping a steady hand at the helm. And that to me is the most important thing. In Congress, what I can tell you I'm working to do, first and foremost, to wrest back our most basic authorities. We're in a moment where the levels of chaos, of corruption, and ultimately of just outrageous costs have reached, it's unlike anything we've ever seen in our lifetimes. The chaos of war making, from the trade wars, I was talking to a small business earlier today, being pushed to the brink of going out of business because of these senseless trade wars. The president is convinced himself, at least momentarily, are some way to raise revenue in this country. Well, newsflash, this is putting American small businesses out of business. The war of choice in Iran, and I see that t-shirt there, not another bomb. Amen, brother. Because every single day that this war of choice continues, every member of the United States Congress should be forced to vote on this war each and every day that it continues. And what we saw last week was a coordinated effort to they knew they were going to lose the vote, so they changed the calendar. I'm sure our friends in Concord can relate to this kind of tactic. But we won't quit, because we know from the lessons of history. Can I just ask you, every veteran who served our country in uniform, please stand up. I want to thank our veterans. I know they're shy. Thank you for your service to our country. The way that we honor your service is by, the way I believe I need to honor your service is by pressing for answers and for accountability from this out of control commander-in-chief, who has set us on a track towards another endless war without any clear objectives and with massive costs. And this, we know from the lessons of history what this sends us towards, and it's nothing that this country needs right now. I will not quit in this effort, and I will not quit in standing up and speaking out to say what's true. And that's what I want to leave you all with right now, because do not underestimate the power of your voice in this moment. Do not, because this is a moment for truth telling. This is a moment for straight talk. And when I came together with 5 of my colleagues last year to say something that every person who joins the military learns right at the outset, this is a cornerstone principle of American law that in the United States of America, our military does not blindly obey. We don't blindly follow orders. We follow the law. And that's a principle that I will proudly repeat every day that I'm honored to represent you. And if I've got to fight this president to stay out of jail, so be it. You know, that's what we're up against right now. And there is nothing more important to me than delivering for you and being true to you. And I think I am true to you by saying what's true. So that is what I will do as long as I'm honored to represent you. And I just want to thank you for being out here tonight. I'm happy to take questions, criticism, jokes. Duties, instructions.
I have a question I'll start with, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
My daughter on our drive over here was mentioning to me how upset she was about transgender folks not being able to serve any longer. Do you think that's going to change anytime soon?
Well, what I can tell you is when you talk to any military commanders who have any experience actually serving and serving in positions of leadership, you talk to Stan McChrystal, who's one of the most decorated military leaders in our country's history. This ban is a massive own goal. It is one of the worst things we could do to undermine military readiness. And I believe we have on our side the facts. We've got the moral case on our side, and it's a fight that we can't let up on. And as I've talked to service members who were separated for outrageous reasons because of who they are, there's nothing more un-American than that in my book. And I do believe that we're going to have to rebuild our military in a very real way after this administration. But what I have an abiding faith in is that this was wrong when they brought it about. We are seeing the wrongness of it in practice every day, and it's a wrong that I won't quit working to right as soon as we possibly can.
Right, so you've seen the president's
Do you mind
action.
just saying your name and where
Hi,
you're from?
I'm Jack, I'm from Hollis.
Please.
We've seen the president's current crusade across the world, starting in Venezuela, going to Iran twice, and possible stuff in Cuba, and just wondering what kind of preemptive action we can take to stop him from continuing this warlust crusade that he's going on.
Look, to me, the most powerful tool we have right now is every ounce of control and leverage we have over the purse strings. So the president is asking for $1.5 trillion to fund the Pentagon. So just think about that for a second. $1.5 trillion to fund the Department of Defense. This is a historic budget, unlike anyone we've seen before. That really is about correcting the disastrous mistake of launching this war of choice in Iran, but also keeping the coffers full to be able to continue additional adventurism. And the Venezuela model, which is what the president invoked when he launched this war in Iran in February the 2nd of 2 significant military operations. This is what they're talking about with respect to Cuba. The idea, there's just the hubris, especially now that we see the situation that we're in, where all of this was foreseeable. You know, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, the challenges that arise when you attempt regime change and fail, and then have to live with the consequences. I really believe, you know, and the challenge of working in Congress right now is that there are Republicans who understand how bad this is, but they suffer from two types of catastrophic fear. The first is they are afraid of losing their seats. And that to me is one of the most outrageous and indefensible types of fear, because why would you go into this line of work if you're not prepared to represent the people who you work for and to do your duty? Setting that aside, the second brand of fear is they're afraid of becoming the target of the president. And we have to just show that as contagious as that kind of fear can be, courage can be too, because between now and November, we've got to make this, we've got to build a coalition. I really believe, you know, the reason that vote got canceled last Thursday was we had the votes. We have the votes now, and we've got to continue to build that coalition out. And I think it matters. When I say do not underestimate your voice, it matters that people are hearing from you. And this is, and what, there's nothing more consequential than the decision to go to war, to start a military conflict. And the moment that this becomes casual or normalized, you're truly doomed.
Hi, Claudia Hoover from Thomas. You know, affordability is a word that's bandied about, but I think it's very meaningful. It's on absolutely everyone's mind, regardless of party or independence or politically minded or not. And one of the things that concerns me is that, I wonder about, and I want to hear from you about, is how is the Democratic Party going to speak to what we're going to do rather than, you know, I mean, we know affordability is a phrase and a word that's very meaningful, and the economics right now are pretty horrific and scary. But, you know, I feel like sometimes Democrats, we don't put forward a plan in a you know, like, here's what we're going to do. I think, having said that, I think it's important to point out what's been done, as you've been doing, because, I mean, there's a time when that needs to be done. It's not being negative, it's being realistic. We need to point out what is going on. But what are we going to put forth as a positive program? Like, what would we do?
Yeah. I mean, this is where I want to be spending 90% of my energy, and, you know, 10% on defense. Unfortunately, these days it's more like 60% defense, 40% bandwidth to really think about the plan ahead. But let me tell you, it is, to me, the defense is where we've got to end these reckless, costly wars. The reason everybody is feeling the acute pain, this affordability crisis right now, goes directly to the gas. And this is why small businesses, in addition to being slammed by the taxes, we have got to bring gas prices back under control. And we're not going to do that by continuing this war. But let me just talk to you about how I'm thinking about the affirmative agenda. I was in Hudson yesterday, and you're exactly right. This is not a partisan issue. No matter where you are, everyone is feeling the pain of housing prices right now. The average age for buying a home in this country is more than 40 years old. 65% of American families are priced out of the median price home. To me, the answer on housing, on energy costs, on food costs, on prescription drugs and healthcare costs really boil down to two big levers that we've got to pull as hard as we possibly can. Number one, we've got to lean in to building more and building better. And how are we going to do that? Well, we've got, for the first time ever, Congress is finally stepping up to the plate. We just passed last week through the House of Representatives a bill called the 21st Century Housing Act. For so long, we were out of the game. in thinking about how the federal government can actually make it easier to build and can crack down on corporate abuses of power, which is the twin lever that we've got to be pulling. What we see right now in New Hampshire and across the country are venture capital firms, private equity operations, guys with a lot of cash who are coming in, buying up the housing supply and jacking up costs forever. Like whether I'm in Hudson or up in Pittsburgh, this is an issue that people are feeling. We need to build more and we need to crack down on corporate abuses of power that are jacking up costs. And that is true to me when you just look at our energy crisis. We have some of the highest energy costs in the country. Now, why is that? In part because the state-sanctioned monopolies, the utilities that have been given the playing field, have gone completely unchecked by our Public Utility Commission, which is rubber stamped in 99% of cases, rate hikes. They've just been so inattentive to the basic trends that we see, and I say this as someone who took on corporate monopolies at the Justice Department before I got to Congress. You know, what happens in a monopoly situation? They give you less and charge you more. That's the basic math and how it shakes out. And that's what we're seeing right now in New Hampshire when it comes to energy costs. Massive own goal with the president signing, his so-called big beautiful bill, HR 1. In addition to making the biggest cuts to healthcare in American history, reversed the biggest investments that would make us the clean energy superpower of the world. It was a massive gift to China. I really believe that a lot of those provisions, which were added into the bill literally in the hour before the House voted on, are ones that we can actually reverse. I have a lot of faith that this is stuff that no one campaigned on this. I mean, a lot of these guys actually campaigned in favor of trying to give us the competitive advantage against China. So in the majority, I think there's a lot we can do to roll back some of the wrongs that have been perpetrated over the last year and a half. But to me, the basic recipe for how we lower costs, when you really boil it down, we've got to be in a position to build more. Some people call this the abundance agenda. I don't know what that word means, but I just think build, baby, build, and crack down on corporate abuses of power. Anywhere in our economy, you just take a look at a family's invoice. I promise you, it can be traced back to some corporate malfeasance that has gone unchecked for my lifetime.
Real quick, do you also think that some of the draconian and heartless cuts to social programs that have been done from the federal level can also be fairly quickly reversed?
When I think about Medicaid and SNAP, and this is something I've talked to every single one of my Republican colleagues who I believe is susceptible to reason, which is not all of them, but enough of them that they didn't campaign on the biggest cuts to Medicaid in American history. They didn't run a campaign on cutting SNAP. And these are two programs that have had long-standing bipartisan support. When you think about SNAP right now, I mean, in New Hampshire, this is a return on investment in taxpayer dollars, a massive return on investment. And the biggest cuts to SNAP in American history have put us on a track. It's hurt farmers, it's hurt family farmers in this area, it's hurting military families, it's hurting veterans, it's hurting people in every corner of the state. This program has been a return on investment, and I do believe we've got to continue to make the case and reverse these cuts because they're just massive, massive own goals that have made us a hungrier, sicker, poorer country, and we're the richest country in the history of the world. No one should be hungry, no one should be going out without health care, and these cuts have been a known goal that no one campaigned on.
On the back of that, was something that I've been thinking a lot about. In fact, I think I talked to Senator Shaheen's office the other day. We closed down the whole government around healthcare in the fall and the subsidies. And I've heard nothing. That was the big issue. And now it's like nothing. It's crickets about healthcare and subsidies. And that continues to be a huge issue. I know there's a million things going on, so it's easy for it to get down to the bottom, but I think it's got to come back up to the top because I have a son who has, gone through the Affordable Care Act And it's just becoming to the point where if you can afford health insurance at all, it gives you almost nothing.
Yeah.
It's so bad that it's really only good for catastrophic care. And so it's just impossible and undoable. I think we have to get back to that healthcare. Medicaid is one thing. I've worked with families for many years who receive Medicaid, so I've dealt with Medicaid a lot over the many years. But the whole healthcare system and the subsidies that we have, which I don't think are long-term answers, but at least it was something.
Absolutely.
And it kept people from going under and going bankrupt because of healthcare problems. So I certainly hope that's something that's going to come back to the top of the agenda of Congress.
Look, it was one of my Republican colleagues, one of the 17 Republicans who we got in the House to vote with us. The only way we can really get the most significant things done in the House right now is good old-fashioned petition campaigns, which I know you're all familiar with because you guys do it. It's the hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye, knee-to-knee. It's discharge petitions. We got 17 Republicans to sign their names to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We did that after a massive setback when the Senate negotiated away all of our leverage. We came back, scraped, got 17 of them. And when I talked to these Republicans, the case they made, the most powerful case, one of them said, Maggie, if we don't extend these tax credits, it's going to create a death spiral. And that's exactly right for so many families, including yours in the state. I mean, these are not the answer. This is not the healthcare revolution that we've got to bring about, and we have got to bring about a healthcare revolution, because for 70% of people in our state to be skipping out on the care they need because they can't afford it, either in time or money, I mean, that's an outrage. We need a revolution, but in the meantime, we need to prevent a death spiral. And what I can tell you is in the House, we got it done. Even after the Senate threw us under the bus, we continued to drive forward, and right now we've got to get it done in the Senate. And I couldn't agree with you more. This shouldn't be off the radar. This is what we put everything into in the fall in this effort. And I'm not in the Senate, but I'm trying my best from where I am. I can tell you we got it done in the House.
So unfortunately, it will have to be our last question for Congresswoman Goodlander. So let's stay there.
I just say one thing. Judy Farr, can we give it up for Judy Farr?
Okay, thanks everyone again. So we're going to continue our programming on Young Voices, Powerful Choices, and we'll hear from our speakers talking about their organizations or themselves and how they're engaging with youth. So first we'll hear from Randall Nielsen from We're Elected. Thank you. Hi,
All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Randall Nielsen, and I am the Executive Director of Queer Elective, which is a queer BIPOC arts organization here in the state that really works to foster a sense of belonging for marginalized communities, using art as a tool for social change. Just to give you a little bit of background on Queer Elective, when I first founded Queer Elective in 2022, I founded it because I saw a need in our community for more consistent opportunities to gather specifically for the queer and BIPOC communities that weren't just focused on Pride Month. And through the work that I've done through the organization, I've been able to see a lot of needs and wants throughout the state. And so Queer Elective's work actually has shifted quite a bit from just providing those gathering opportunities to really analyzing the infrastructure here for social change in the state and starting to work on a broader scale to address that. Some of the things that we're really proud of recently are this resource book. It's called The State of Queer New Hampshire. And what it does is it catalogs queer, BIPOC, affirming run organizations throughout the state. It's been a nice, beautiful resource book. We also, in this resource book, included a ton of art, a ton of writing from queer BIPOC individuals in this state. But another really key part of this is taking that community building aspect and making that connection between that sense of belonging and getting people to act. And so in this resource book, we have like a story of how Queer Elective got founded. Queer Elective was founded when I found myself on a lake with some friends. We were tubing the Saco River, a little liquid courage as you do, and we were just fantasizing about what we could create if we really wanted to create something for our community. Because of that liquid courage, said, okay, I'll do it. And to three people, I had three kind of friends that decided to follow me along the way. And I think like that story is a great example of the need for community in order to drive change, but also the need for people to step up and address the issues that we're seeing in our community. We have done a lot of work to understand the infrastructure of the state. I will talk a little bit more about that as we get involved in our conversations today, but I'm so happy to be here talking with you all about the challenges we're facing with getting younger people engaged in politics and moving forward. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from State Senator Carol Roy and her work with youth.
Sure, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Some faces I haven't seen in town lately, so great to have you. As she mentioned, I am running for State Senate for District 12, which includes Hollis. Thank you for the loop. Hollis, Brookline, Mason, Greenville, New Ipswich, Rindge, and wards 1, 2, and 5 of Nashua. So it's a nice variety of towns and cities and communities that come together into District 12, which makes it pretty unique. It also can make it a little bit tough to win. From my experience perspective, I've served on the Hollis School Board for how many years has it been? I was elected in 2019. And so from a policy perspective, I've been able to enact policies for our students in Hollis. That is for our elementary schools. From a personal perspective, outside of my Hollis School Board work and my day job as a customer success manager for a cybersecurity company, I actually own my own entertainment company and I'm an event DJ on the weekends. So I became a DJ by accident because of a youth cheerleading competition in 2007. So I have actually continued doing all of those competitions. I've followed these kids from being 7 years old, competing in these youth comps, to now they're graduating from high school, and at their last competition in March, they and their parents are coming down to my table to say goodbye because I've been a part of their lives for so long. It is an incredible privilege to be that for the youth of New Hampshire. And that's outside of politics. That is just kind of who I am. I think that there is so much potential in kids and they don't even themselves realize it. I've heard a lot of folks say that kids don't know, we saw the kids doing walkouts in protest of the ice raids. And they're like, oh, those kids just want to get out of school. And I was like, those kids have all the information in the world in their hands. We didn't have that when I was a kid. My kids laughed that I got my first cell phone when I graduated college. So, we have to make that connection for them that they have access to everything good, bad, and ugly. So we need to make sure that as much good as we can gets in front of them. And so at each of the competitions, I'm the voice and I'm announcing winners. So I always, right before the awards, impart some sort of knowledge. If they're little kids, it's just, great job, keep showing up, keep working hard, teamwork makes the dream work, all of those kinds of things. When I'm talking to the high school kids, they deal with a whole different set of things. And I really want to inspire them, and I remind them that they have a voice and it's powerful. So when Judy offered to have me be on this panel, I said absolutely, because it is so important that they realize that potential. I see some young people in the audience now, and I think that having people encourage them to harness that power and to make their voice be heard without judgment, without correction, you know what I mean, is really, really important to kids, and I've been able to do that. And so I always, and I'm wearing one right now, I wear different inspirational t-shirts to every single cheerleading competition, and it's been a thing now for about 3 years. So the kids arrive at competitions and they run over to see what's the shirt. And so we talk about the shirt during the awards. And so I actually wore this one specifically for tonight, and it said, "If not us, then who? If not now, then when?" And I actually wore this for the last competition of the season for the high school kids. And and the kids came up to me afterward and were like, that's amazing. That's so true. We can do it. We can do it. And so I think as long as we continue putting that goodness out there as many times as we can to as many youth as we can, and realize that we can't continue handing them a not great situation and empower them to help correct it with us and fix it and make it better, we are going to win this. So thank you.
We have Maggie McCloskey from the New Hampshire Young Democrats.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Maddie. I'm president of the New Hampshire Young Democrats. And I'm sitting down. I hiked this weekend. I have a soccer game tonight. I'm young, but I'm getting old. My knees hurt.
Yeah. I hear that.
So the purpose of our organization is to recruit, train, and elect young Democrats. For us, that means anyone aged 18 to 40. And the main purpose of our organization is to fundraise for these candidates. I'm a fundraiser by career, even though I'm a few years in. So our purpose is to leverage the NHGP's connections and the people they bring to this state, especially during our presidential years, and fundraise as much money as we can to directly give it to our candidates. The other costs our group fundraises for is like our Google Suite, our MailChimp, and really like travel expenses to the National Young Dems of America convention. So really we're just trying to funnel money to young candidates because it's one of the biggest barriers for running for office. It costs money to run. You have to pay for mail. If you want staff, you have to properly pay them. Things like that. So our main focus right now is raising as much money as we can for young people, just to make it easier and take that burden off of their shoulders. When you're young and running for office, you don't really have the networks to fundraise the way adults usually do. Not that we're not adults, but
Are you saying old people?
I'm saying old people. If you're just starting your career, you haven't built up those connections. If you're new to New Hampshire, you don't have the long ties to your communities. So that's really our main purpose. I've been a part of the Young Dems of New Hampshire for quite some time. I started at Plymouth State in 2019. COVID hit, a lot of the orgs, I'm sure all felt that too, dissipated during COVID. And then after college, I came back to New Hampshire, kind of stayed, and have been on the board of the Young Dems for 4 years. And we're seeing a lot of folks, kind of young people, not so much leaving the party, but leaving Dem spaces to go to groups like We're Elected or 603 Forward, 350 Action, because young people can care a lot more about like issues that are happening rather than like, no offense to the Democratic Party, but I'm a part of it, so I can. But we're seeing a lot more young people go to these organizations that are supporting the causes that really affect them and they really care about. So one of the biggest things like our group is struggling with, and I think you all probably feel it, like the party is like engaging young people at like our events and bringing them into town meetings like this and understanding like the importance of caring about your Dem committees. I haven't solved that problem yet. I'm asking for the answer. I don't have it, but we're trying our best. And I think one of the ways is hosting things like this and showing your community that you do care. Yeah, I know we're going to touch on one of the other topics in our questions, so I can leave it at that. we pass it back to you.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
No.
Do you have a basket that you could leave at the door so we could make a contribution to your efforts?
I don't, I forgot all my stuff.
Well, maybe we can get a.
But we do have it online, New Hampshire Young Democrats, you can donate online,
Yeah.
and I can give you my information. Sorry. Young people forget things too.
Any questions? So that's the kind of involvement we want from you all. We want this to be interactive, so remember, you can either just yell out that if you have a question, raise your hand, or you can write on the cards on your tables, and our volunteers will bring them up to me. So I will get this started with a first question here. So you mentioned that a lot of the younger folks are interested in issues, and we're really curious to hear, like, what issues are you hearing about most from young voters? And are there any that are surprising you or differing from mainstream assumptions? And any of you can answer. Would you like to start on that one?
I can go first. So I guess right now, a big one that we're seeing, especially happening across the country, are the data centers being built, and communities not really having input in regulating them, or if they're being built or if they're not. I know the one in Utah keeps me up at night, even though that's across the country. They're saying it could raise the temperature in the desert at night by 28 degrees. And we all know that just a few degrees is devastating. So just to think of like the impact that could have in New Hampshire, and there is one proposed in New Hampshire right now in Nottingham, yeah, almost in a made up town, Northwood.
And there is one in Seoul too.
Northwoodsville, okay. Yeah, so I know the one in Nottingham right now is like a big issue, and I've seen just like so many Instagram reels, and I don't want to talk anymore, but young people are showing up online in a way that like hasn't really happened in New Hampshire before. There's a big like online community of people who are really getting involved. So I think it's like things that we're not allowed to have a say in, that's going right over the heads of our town committees, our state house, just things that the people in charge are really just deciding for us are really upsetting to young people.
That's really interesting. You mentioned the data center in Utah. I was at a conference there 2 weeks ago, and all they talked about was nuclear powering these data centers, and they didn't mention it at all about raising the temperature. But Utah is a very Republican state, so. Any other comments on what youth issues you're hearing about? Oh, of course.
You talked about how young people are being active in their specific. You mentioned that young people are being active online. For those of us who are older, and maybe some of our representatives, they're not getting that information. They don't know how engaged younger people may be in these communities. How are we getting their message online to our representatives?
Great question, Jan. I'm online with them, so I get some direct information. But it also, you know, when you have supportive folks, in the case of what I'm involved in, obviously I'm a candidate, so I have some campaign supporters who are younger, and we have them be able to say, hey, did you happen to see this? Did you miss this? So it is not something that if you're not engaged or have somebody plugged into that you would see, which is detrimental. But sometimes you just gotta go play in the mud with them. I don't have a TikTok account, but as DJ Carol, I'm definitely in some of their videos because they make me dance with them. Don't ever watch those. It's not good for anybody's eyes. But they're very open about that online, and they're very vocal in sharing things like that.
So it's the representatives themselves, the candidates themselves who need to reach out.
Yeah, and if you have people in your circle to ask them to kind of help you monitor. Also, I have friends whose kids are the ones that are posting things, so I talk to their parents as well. So you kind of get into that network. I'm in a unique position, obviously, with my DJ work and being with youth all the time, that now that I'm also a candidate, it's helpful for me to see that point of view that I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
We'll just let.
That is such an interesting question that you bring up, because for me, I am very active on like TikTok, and so the content creators that are creating a lot of information and sharing a lot of information around New Hampshire's political system, I am very aware of, and I had honestly never thought of because when I think about these questions, I usually like, how do we get the information into the hands of the young people? But now you're asking, how do we get this information being generated by from young people into the hands of older people? And that's actually something I hadn't thought about. And I honestly don't have a good answer for that, other than making sure that you're talking to local young people in your area. But I do want, in terms of like the group that is making this content, they go by the hashtag NHTalk, and they've been all of them are very active in person in addition to being active online. And so what they have been doing is creating content around going in person to testify at the polls, highlighting bills that need to be acted on through the sign-in testimony. And so I do think that the dissemination of that information is still getting out into the community. But I guess, yeah, I think an important thing to take away from this is making sure that you are asking young people around you where they're getting their information. And that is that's important for someone like me to understand that transfer of information, not just one thing.
Gentleman has a question. Sure. The bomb shirt, yes. The bomb shirt.
I have had contact recently with some high school age students. And the conversation gets to what can we do? They are not old enough to vote. I did a little homework, and I have a printout with some contact information for issue-oriented organizations that I would be pleased to give out. And some of this would apply to people that are of age to vote too. So you just tag me on the way out and plan to hand them out to you.
Yeah,
can I just add to that, because we got a question on the card here. Very similar question. Are there any ways that younger teens, 14 to 17, that can't vote yet but really want to help out, how can they get more involved? YouTube posts, TikTok posts, or even just clubs or events they can go to at that younger age group?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that I created the State of Queer New Hampshire is to understand where we have gaps in terms of operational support in our communities. And the reason I mentioned that is if there's something missing in your community, that's a sign for you to step up and create that. And so that is a fantastic thing to encourage younger people to do. I think organizations like Queer Elective and other organizations are putting together toolkits for people to create their own thing. But the other thing that I want to highlight is that I am continually shocked by the number of people that don't know New Hampshire has 4 state representatives, that our representatives are paid only $100. And I think that is a fantastic place for younger people that are starting to get more involved to step into. I want people to stop treating our state representatives like they're common, like there's some mysterious black box that's far away from here. These people are your neighbors, and we need to make sure everyone understands that. And so I think that is something that has the potential to truly change the way that our political system moves. New Hampshire has a citizen legislature, but in a lot of ways we don't treat it like a citizen legislature. We treat it like any other big wigs in this fancy building far away. These people are your neighbors. They live walking distance from you. I'm pretty sure what our state senator or state representative one of them lives walking distance from this building. And I think it's so important for us to make that connection between the actions that these people are doing and how it's impacting your community. Don't treat it like it's some enigma that you have no control over. These people are your neighbors. They're making these decisions on your behalf. And I think that young people can help out that cause by making sure that their friends understand that as well. And just start to get a little bit more involved in understanding how these systems work so that they can continue to share that information. And then, yeah, sign up for it.
Anyone else want to respond?
Yeah, there's no age requirement to knock doors. And it's a really fun way to like get your first step and like foot in the door with politics. Choosing a candidate you really like and learning about them and then going to talk to your friends and your neighbors about them. And it's a good way to like bring a parent with you or like go as a group. Also if you like are just learning how to drive, you can drive someone who needs a driver around because they're probably licensed and you can kill two birds with one stone. Like that's the political side. Go knock doors. It's scary, but it's really fun. And they'll give you good packets if you ask really nicely.
Nice.
Lady has, oh, sure,
No worries. Totally agree. I've had a lot of the student athletes who are not old enough to vote say, I can't vote for you, can I help? And I'm like, yep, you can. And so we're going to be enlisting them for doing just that or holding signs, things like that. There is no age limit for that. And you mentioned on the card, I think I was kind of reading over your shoulder, but these kids are all over social media. They can make content about you and tag your page, tag your email, things like that. They can promote events. There, again, is no age limit for activation in that way.
We'll get to you next time.
Thank you very much. My name is Erin. Looking at the very bums me out that 75% of young people don't go out to vote. I am looking for and wondering what things would help motivate them to come and vote. And I'm wondering if you've had a chance to look at or heard reports from the Democratic National Party's postmortem on the last election, and if that is addressed at all in the national. I'm very interested.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I did not read that. I wasn't quite thrilled with the response, but I think it was also just reflective of 2024. Maybe Democrats got complacent. And I think like the biggest thing that's gonna get young people out this year is hope. Candidates that inspire hope, conversations that inspire hope. I mean, I've been on the internet since I was like 10 and it's been pretty doom and gloom. My little sister, she's 21 and a college student here, and same thing. I mean, not to be graphic, but she saw like beheadings on Instagram when she was a little kid. Like when my parents found that out, they were like, oh my God, like what is happening online? Like young kids are exposed to an entirely different world than a lot of us grew up with. And I think like candidates and just like inspiring hope in the next 5 months is going to be instrumental in turning people out. That's what young people are looking for to get to the polls. Not just the same humdrum experience that I think we've all been put through with voting in the last few years. So I think that's important for like candidates and people running for office to remember.
Yeah, and to jump off of that, 100%, yes, and I don't know if people saw, but the New Hampshire Libertarian Party went to the National Libertarian Convention. They were like, everybody don't know what the exact term is. They were essentially voted out of the National Libertarian Convention for being too awful of people. And so there's a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, yeah, too awful by libertarian standards. But there are a lot of people that I saw on Facebook that are talking about this as a sign of the downfall of the Free State Project. And the thing that immediately came to mind for me is that let's take a minute, let's daydream that the Free State Project does this. What are we going to do at that point? Because I feel like a lot of people will assume that our candidates, our people in office, are more or less going to preserve the status quo. They're going to make changes that are milquetoast at best. And what people want are things that are pushing it back against a system that they don't feel serves their needs. I truly hate to say it, but Trump won because he was so anti-status quo, and we need someone on our side that is very similarly looking at the system, looking at analyzing exactly why it's not addressing the needs of our community and providing solutions to that. And so, again, let's daydream. Free State Project is gone. What will our candidates change? That's the story we need to be communicating with people as we move in. And again, this is a story of hope. This isn't a narrative of hope. We cannot win this election by maintaining the status quo. And I do think that unfortunately is a critique of the Democratic Party in the past. So.
And Aaron, for me to chime in on your question as well. Maddie was saying earlier, it's not about party, it's not about politics, it's about issues. So when you start to talk to the youth, what matters to them? What are they afraid about? What would they like to see change? And how can they then say, okay, from a voting perspective, which candidate is supporting the things that matter to me? I think this is kind of an all ages theme, right? You got to figure out who most represents you. But when you're talking to kids, it doesn't matter if I'm from the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, I'm an independent, it doesn't matter to them. It's about what they can do that represents what the youth want. So I think that's also part of it, is take out the politics, take out the party, talk about the real issues, and outline. These kids are very smart. They're very smart, I can tell. They want to know, okay, if we get rid of this, what's the consequence? They see consequence all over the place online. So being able to say to them, I want to know what you care about, and then outline who does that make sense to pursue from a voting perspective or a support perspective. Of course, thank you.
We'll go to Maggie right there. Hello. As we're talking about engaging and empowering youth towards voting and all of these things, what can we do to help build their stamina? Because, you know, as this administration, as we heard Maggie here, she's playing defense a lot. What can we do to help build the stamina of one of our candidates and of our young people so that they can continue to stay empowered and engaged and not lose that hope?
I love this question. Thank you so much for asking it, because this is exactly where I see queer electives work shining the most. I firmly believe social change starts with belonging. And a big part of the reason that we're having a lack of engagement from young people is that they don't, especially in New Hampshire, don't feel a sense of belonging to the place. I was in Lancaster recently and having a conversation about how we're building up there, and they're talking about how when people leave, they're not coming back. There's not opportunities for them to gather. And so I think that is a sign that there's a big opportunity of creating spaces for gathering and joy and community connection at the same time that we're building these networks for action. I think that creating the need and a sense of urgency for action over and over without taking the time to rest and celebrate and connect with other community members is a recipe for burnout. And I think that if we want long, sustainable change, we need to create a space where young people feel like they belong and they feel like they are contributing to the progress of the community and other.
Hi, I can right now. I'm Juliana. I am a 2019 grad from Congresswoman High School. Just thought I would add a little bit of youth perspective on the getting out the vote. Obviously, that statistic is abysmal and terrible for our entire voting bloc. And what you've all to talk about with the motivation is really great ideas. For me, motivation has never been an issue. I was 15 or 16 when Trump got elected, and so the power of voting has always stuck with me, and I've always made a really profound effort to get out my vote. I went to college out of state, so I had to vote absentee for all 4 years while I was in school, and then I've lived abroad for a couple of years, so voting overseas absentee in the state is even more difficult. So I just want to bring up those issues of how that can cause logistical barriers to getting out the vote for youth. Elections happen in the fall. I was actually studying abroad in the midterms of 2022, and so I had to make my first foray into voting abroad absentee. It's very difficult in the state to vote absentee. You have to email the town clerk and then go pick up your ballot at the town clerk, and the town clerk here in Hollis has the most, random hours that I've ever heard of in my life. And then to vote out overseas, you have to, again, email the town clerk, and then they will email the ballot when it is ready. You have to print it, and then you have to send it back and make sure that it gets to Hollis, New Hampshire in time. And so sometimes that prohibits me from voting in just town elections because, the info might not be out yet. Maybe the ballot is ready, but there's no information on any of the candidates running here or any of the issues in town. So sometimes I've had to, not vote in town elections, which are obviously very important. But yeah, just wanted to raise those issues. Obviously, this is not something that we can solve just as civilians. It's up to elected officials. I'm not sure if it's up to the governor or the Secretary of State here in New Hampshire, but it's something that is very difficult. That I know is a barrier to entry for young people. And then I've also had conversations recently with much older folks, people in their 90s who, have difficulties with mobility and getting out on the day of voting. And so it's an issue that honestly spans both young people and older people and working people who travel for work and can't be in state, and things come up like that. And so just wanted to kind of lay that out there as another little bit of perspective.
Awesome. Yeah. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, just to comment on that, thank you for everything. Thanks for voting when it's really hard. New Hampshire is like the worst voting laws, I think, in the country. I think we're 50th for like accessibility to voting. And it just got harder. Kelly Ayotte also, I think, recently appointed the guy who was in charge of the phone jamming scandal in 2002 to our state election board. Awesome. Great news for us this fall. And she also just made it really hard for college students to vote. You can't use your college ID to vote anymore. When I first moved here, I was from Connecticut, but I stayed in New Hampshire like over winter and summer breaks. So I used my college ID, 2 pieces of mail, and like at least once I signed off campus to vote in New Hampshire. And it's the reason I'm still sitting here today. I got involved in my community. The first politician I met was Andrew Valinsky in like 2019. I don't remember if anyone knows. He used to walk around with some stick that had something to do with the state budget. That rings bells to people. I got to meet with Lou D'Alessandro, and like I just fell in love with New Hampshire politics, and it's the reason a lot of other people have touched on it, that young people stay in the state, they get involved in their communities, and now they're restricting young people's voting rights because they know young people aren't happy with the way Kelly Ayotte and her administration is running the state. So the solution is supporting good bills when they come up, but we'll see how this fall goes. And I think a big part is just having conversations with folks who are going to be eligible to vote.
Oh, gentleman right here.
I'm going to try to connect generations with motivating issues here. So today happened to be opening day for summer interns at my office. And it got me thinking about how long ago it was that I started out. I realized that I started doing what I do probably before their parents were born. So, but it also got me thinking about beginnings of careers. And one of the things that is most important about beginnings of careers is what is your starting salary. And I'm thinking that minimum wage as an issue for bringing minimum wage up to the livable wage is something that would likely motivate young voters to become much more involved if they're on the outskirts and perhaps not quite as sanguine of the possibilities that their voices being heard.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and 2 points that I want to make is number one, since I've been running for Senate 2018, I've always had interns from Hollis Brookline, from Nashua, wherever I was placed, wherever my district was, I was able to have interns. I have 2 here tonight, Izzy and Tessa. One fantastic intern for 2 cycles, who is now my campaign manager, Angela. Great way to get young people involved, and some of our interns went on to do Lead the People, and they were champions. So I highly recommend that to you as well, because they're really awesome. The second thing I wanted to mention is about the status quo. I have been running for 20 years. I'm only 49. And I have been serving for 8 years out of those 20. Out of those 8 years, the Democrats were in the majority every time I won. So 8 years out of 20 years. And if we look at the past 6 years, it's really 3 years in total control. And 1 year that Governor Sununu vetoed all of our bills, our great bills like automated voter registration, paid family medical leave. So when we talk about the status quo, I want you to be really careful about that, because you need to understand what is it that they will fight for, because we are fighting to get rid of this status quo that we have had for years. There's a lot of good people out there. We have a lot of work to do, and we really need young people to help us do it.
Katie Foster and as well. I teach high school English. I was at HB for 17 years, and now it's my 4th year in Nashua. Young people are not given enough credit for how bright they are, how inquisitive they are, and how creative they are. And you mentioned art. At any age, young people can express what their frustrations are, what their hopes are, what their dreams are, in the form of music and arts and writing and whatever they're creating for content. But that's so important, and it can be really inspiring. We went to Bruce Springsteen concert on Sunday in Boston, and to kind of, you guys probably know who that is. All right. But he named what's going on unapologetically, the Lord, and he had protest songs, but he also had really uplifting and hopeful songs. And I feel like there's an absence of that, and the young people are like so well equipped to address all of that and create the art that we can enjoy and listen to and be inspired by and learn from, and put it on those platforms that we can all get to. Thank you.
I have one question before we get. As an older person here, is there anything we should stop doing that is turning away young voters? Besides some of the words I use that I'm not hip anymore.
I mean, one, I really like your point about music and arts. No one wants to hear me sing, but I think it's great for young people to really make art right now. I think art is a big form of resistance. 2, I think something just like Democrats do in general, and this is a big, I think, theme just coming up, is the way we talk about issues. Like we need to dumb it down. We need to simplify the things we're talking about. We need to use smaller words. Everyone in here is here because they're smart and they're educated and they know what's going on. That's not the general public. They're worried about paying their bills, feeding their children, and going home to a warm house or cool house because we don't pay for air conditioning in the winter. But like the average voter right now wants to hear an average conversation. They want to hear what makes them feel better, and that isn't being made to feel smaller or less than, that they don't know enough about what they're voting on and what's coming up in November. So I think like when we're having these conversations at the doors or at events or planning your next like fundraiser or topics is like making sure the words we're choosing really reflect the people we're talking to, and it's just people who want to get through each day and know that there's a future for their families.
Thank you. I just want to chime in. It's going to connect a couple of questions. The gentleman over here was talking about the interns who are worried about being able to have a good starting salary. I feel like some of the issues that maybe their parents are facing, they get a glimpse into it, but they're not paying property taxes. They're not seeing that climb. So they're not facing the keyword affordability we were talking about earlier, right, Claudia? They're thinking about how can I have a good base. And I think that some of the things that have been done in New Hampshire to kind of hold that back from making things a little more affordable for the youth to stay is driving them to go elsewhere. So I agree with you that we have to talk about issues and the things that matter to them, but the things that maybe matter to them are not the same things that matter to me as a homeowner here in Hollis. Same theme, can we afford it? Does it make sense to stay? But it is a little bit different. But I totally agree that we have to give full credit to these kids because, and I call you all kids, I'm sorry, you can be 30 and you're a kid. But I think we need to give credit to them that they are doing research and they're identifying things that are important to them. And so making sure that we're not minimizing or discounting their lived experience since it was different than ours and what they're having to deal with as being very different than what we dealt with when we were finishing college back in the day.
This will be our last question, Claudia.
I think when we were putting this program together, one of the things we wanted to get direct comment from everyone about, audience members, panelists, is because we're brushing on it now, which is what are the concerns of young people that make them 75% not voters. So this room, which we've all commented on, is, we're preaching to the converted here to some degree or not, and we're bolstering each other, giving each other wonderful perspectives and ideas, which is so powerful. At the same time, a lot of people, young people who aren't here, feel very marginalized and unable to hop in. And I think the minimum wage thing really gets at it, this, in my mind. But there are, young people who come in the same varieties as old people. They're people of color, they're queer people, they're people who don't come from wealth. And there are a lot of ways that people are unable to hop in a way that they feel hopeful. And it sounds like that's our theme tonight, is keeping ourselves and young people hopeful, like as Randall said, creating community and lots of other ways people have said. But I want to know, real deal from people here, what are the things that you think account for the very low turnout of people to register, and even of those young people who are registered to get to the polls? Because something is going on, because that's a lot lower than for older people. So what does everybody think?
I want to just chime in really quickly from my own personal experience, because I wasn't motivated to vote a lot when I was younger. I grew up in a very Republican household. I was a registered Republican when I came out of high school and into college, because that's what I knew, and that was the environment that I lived in. And as soon as I realized that that did not work for me, and I became an independent, I couldn't have those conversations in my house. So there was a lot of I don't wanna call it fear, but kind of trepidation of going against what my parents feel and think and canceling out their votes with mine and that does actually still apply today. I've talked to kids who've said that. And they're like, if my parents ever found out I was voting for a Democrat or a Republican against what they do, they would never forgive me. And so I find that really interesting because, you know, parents who want to impose their political beliefs on their kids will pressure the kids to tell them how they voted. So I do know that that has been a factor for some.
I just want to answer that question. State Work Play New Hampshire's doing a lot of research and a lot of work about that this age generation that we're trying to recruit, right? But they're all leaving New Hampshire because of lack of multiple things. You know, we can talk about the current climate, we can talk about housing affordability, those are all very real. Transportation, huge. Entertainment, huge. Dating. Has anyone tried to date and be 30 right now? Right? But it's really it's different. And I think we have to also, like, when we're thinking about, you know, what we want from our next legislature, you know, come up with ideas that recruit that age level to come back to New Hampshire, to make them want to stay, to get them energized. Like, hey, here's a candidate. They want to make, you know, public transportation more affordable. They want to make housing more affordable. There's so many more ideas that we can be throwing out there. And all we're doing right now, I feel, is we are just so stuck on this defense mode. There's a lot of horrible things that we have to play defense for, but we're talking about hope. We're talking about all these different things that we want out. There hasn't been any ideas that we floated around here tonight. You know, what are the ideas? How do we promote these ideas? And let's get them going and let's mobilize people on these ideas, not just on hope, but the hope attached to something tangible.
I do think we came up with some ideas today about creating a space for belonging, making connections with the youth, having a message of hope, challenging the status quo. I think there was a lot of good discussion on those, but that's what I took away from today. Sorry, Randall, I know you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just gonna second what Lois just said. Our current legislature is not legislating for a future. How they have HB 155, which is cutting the corporate tax bill yet again. I think it went from 0.7, it's at 0.55 now, and they're trying to take another 0.05 off. That has a finite amount of like cutting you can do to it. And that's their whole strategy right now, is just cutting. That's not legislating for a future. And that's what we need people to stand up and do, is legislate for a future for New Hampshire. And so, yeah, I like Lewis's idea. Let's daydream a little bit. What do we want? I know one thing for me is the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts was cut from $1.5 million to $150,000. Despite it being a tremendous economic driver for the state, and despite the return on investment for that. And so that's something I would love for us to get back if we have the opportunity to do so. And yeah, I mean, we have a couple of minutes, so if anybody else wants to share, what do you want for the future if we staging a little bit? What do you want if we went in?
So if we're throwing things out there, I think one of the main things that causes the youth to get discouraged and why this daydreaming becomes so difficult, focusing on hope is so difficult, is that there's a feeling that even if it's not status quo, for example, that all we're going to get is something incremental. I think what's important is that the young Democrats out there, people who are aligned with democratic values, are ready for radical change. We're ready for significant change. When we talk about having a livable wage, that doesn't just mean bringing New Hampshire up to the $15 or so. Well, we need to think about this for a moment. We're in Hollis. How close is Massachusetts to here? How many young people are just working somewhere in Massachusetts across the line and already getting that wage? If we fight the good fight and all that does is bring our minimum wage to on par with them, well, then we can talk about an income tax difference, but it's only marginal. We need to be talking not just about keeping up on minimum wage, but what is a livable wage? And the reality is that a livable wage for a young person, if it's going to be for us to be able to be self-sufficient and actually starting careers, is even more than $15 an hour. And I think people want to hear that. When it comes to the environment is something that this kind of goes back to the conversation about how there's a lot of doom and gloom that we see as we grow up. We grew up with the environment as an existential crisis. We look at our planet and know that on our current trajectory, it might not survive the rest of our lifetimes. And the adults, the establishment, doesn't really want to do a lot about it. We need to have a vision that focuses not on what we can do to take the next step, but how we can really solve the problem, how we can get to an end goal that is in line with our vision. I'm rambling a bit, so I'll pass it on.
Okay, thank you.
I think the piggyback on that, because it's so interesting. I'm your state rep here in Hollis, Kat Maggie. And I just want to say, there are those of us that are up there struggling to get something actually done on data centers and on all the relevant things. We're just not in charge. And so there are good people doing good work. There are people who understand how to create vision, how to plan appropriately, how to get ahead of the issues that are daunting for young people to be able to stay in the state. What we have to figure out when elections are coming, and the reason young people, I hope, will get more engaged than they have been, is who's working for you, right? Who are the people working for? Because when they turn down minimum wage, or there's plenty of other examples of future-focused policies that are based on data and reality. They're not based on ideology. We have to figure out a way to get beyond where we are now, because what I liked about New Hampshire when I first moved here and started paying attention to politics is that we understood how to do a lot with a little, and we would put together stakeholder groups of people who really understood the issues, and we would make good decisions based on the fact that we were working really as a community. And that has fallen away, and a lot of that has to do with money in politics. There's a lot of fundamentals that have been infiltrated by moneyed interests, and it took a long time to take hold here, but it has taken hold here. So what I really wanted to say when I stood up is that I get to interact with people at the high school and the schools a lot. That's great. I know that I didn't get activated into politics until later in my life because you're busy when you're young, right? You're busy going to college. You have a lot of new things facing you that you have to put energy into. And so I think for a lot of young people, when they see the lack of focus in our government, the lack of attention, and even the lack of clear decision about who the government serves, they figure it's a waste of their time. So you end up consuming a lot of things online and probably even getting more discouraged, right? So this is a cycle where we can help turn that around for younger people, but what we're saying is younger people need to talk to each other, and you have to help us as well, because if you have a voice, you have to exercise it, because that's the only way it's going to change. And I don't want to take any more time, but I just want you to know we're not all voting for that stuff. There's a bunch of us that are losing those votes because we don't have votes, and we are still trying to do things that people would like to see done.
All right, so thanks everyone. Thank you to our panel for coming tonight. We appreciate your time. We have candidate Carol Roy speaking now. We have 2 minutes for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for being here. It was a privilege to be on this panel and speaking for Grand Village with Maggie. The youth are incredibly important to me, and obviously that's been the focus of tonight's event. But as a candidate, I don't represent just the youth, I represent everybody. And so I have been doing a lot of listening in different meetings to talk to folks. Oh, yeah.
Just to interrupt, it's for you, you should all donate to Carol, that's how you get it. If you're elected, Carol, other people running, we all totally like money in politics, but it pays for your mail, it pays for your insurance, it pays for your staff. So keep your money if you have it.
Thank you so much.
But I've talked to a lot of folks at the different outings and I hear you. And I've spoken to our current representatives and our folks who have served and are running yet again, Melanie and Kat, I see them in the room. And it doesn't go unnoticed that people are hurting. It doesn't go unnoticed that some of our youth don't feel heard. You were asking about what can we do, like an action. I want to host a youth forum. I want kids to come. Let's talk about it. I want to hear what the things are that you're posting about. Maybe we're not hearing. You're saying, right? How do we know? How can we get that? I would like to do that. So I'm going to work with Henry, my campaign manager. Surprise! I'm going to do a youth forum, Henry. They love that. But I do think it's really important that you ask me questions about the things that are important to me and how I will serve you. That's the best way for you to get to know me, and that's how I can gain your support in this race. I am challenging a Republican incumbent who is very well funded by Republican PAC money, and they've already started digging through my voting record on the Hollis School Board and trying to drop things there. You know, if that's what you found, I'm in a pretty good spot. So anything that you guys can do to help spread the word. If you can offer to host a gathering, it can be small. We can do coffee. We can walk the track at Lawrence Farm some morning after I drop the kiddos off to school. That would be lovely. And I think, again, while we're talking about our youth voices, every single person's voice in here matters. Your lived experience matters. What you're dealing with as a resident of New Hampshire right now matters. And your current elected majority is not listening to what you're saying to them. I will listen to you. So thank you so much for your support. If you would like to come to a gathering in support of my campaign, we are having one on the 10th of June. Henry and I can share that information with you if you're interested, so you can RSVP. Address forthcoming when you RSVP. But thank you to the Whalens for hosting. But thank you all so very much for letting me talk individually here, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
So this is the end of our, thank you. This is the end of our programming. Again, thank you all for coming out for this event. And if you really enjoyed the formatting and the panel discussion, please let us know and we can plan another event similar to this with speakers and a panel discussion. So thank you all. Have a good night.